Hey there, and welcome to this tutorial about how to draw cheetahs. Among all the different cats that I drew so far, these slender running machines have the most distinct and fascinating anatomy in my opinion. They are amazing and majestic animals, and therefore quite a pleasure to draw. So let's get right to it. Thank you. I'm starting with the head. We're going to look at it from the side. So I'm drawing this oval shape here at first. To explain why I draw an oval shape and not a circle, let me show you their skull. You can draw an oval around the skull, and it is a fairly close approximation. From the front, the shape would look more circular. It is of course not perfect, we will need to make some corrections. However, I personally find it easier to comprehend than drawing a circle and adding the snout in front of it. I would say it's just personal preference, do whatever works best for you. Next up are the center lines, which are quite helpful for placing all the facial features that we need. And I'm drawing both vertical and horizontal center lines. I made these two sketches of the face from the front and side. They will be helpful when I explain the facial structures. One helpful thing is adding this line here from the intersections at the side that will help us determine the position of the eyes. And this angle here is quite small. Then I simply start with the nose right here, draw this triangle shape. Compared to other big cats, this nose is fairly small actually. And we leave a small gap between this bottom here and the intersection of the center lines. And this triangle is very close to this intersection here. Then I draw the nose bridge, which basically follows the same direction as the center line here, until we touch this line. And then I simply curve up to draw these indications for where the eyes are going to be. Then I draw a small line downwards and this upside down Y shape, curve around and touch this corner of the nose. The same on the other side. I'm stretching a bit further back and then curve around. To adjust the head shape, here I'm subtracting quite a lot. Then draw over the oval shape just ever so slightly and turn around until we touch the oval shape once again, and this part is fairly flat. The chin also is slightly drawn over the guidelines. As for the ears, what I like to do is start from the middle of the eyes and draw these curves that are parallel to the center line here. And very close to the back of the head, right here, would be the inner corner of the ear. We draw a straight line at an angle, and the top of the ear would be slightly above the top of the head. And then we curve around all the way and leave a gap right down here. We are not connecting once again with the oval shape. On the other side, the same thing. This ear is also pointing towards the front. You might have noticed that the drawing looks different now. That is because I've prepared versions of the drawings to ensure that I provide good looking and accurate results for you. Now we move on to the rest of the body, starting with a simplified skeletal structure. It is mainly for defining the general pose and proportions for the drawing, and later we add more details. For comparison purposes, here is a simple drawing of a cheetah's skeleton. To get the proportions right, I will take the head length as the reference size. So the length of the initial oval shape, plus a little bit extra because we look at it from the side. At first I draw the neck, which is slightly shorter than the head length. And in this case the cheetah will have its head raised, probably because it's attentive. Here would be the shoulders, and then we curve towards the back. The spine is quite flexible and can curve a lot, but for the pose that we want to draw, a simple standing pose, this straight line is enough. The length of the spine is about 3.5 times the head length. That is quite a lot, but the reason is simply because their head is so small. I'm also going to draw the body slightly from the side, therefore the spine appears slightly shorter. Continuing with the shoulder blades, which are about the same length as the head length. While standing straight, the shoulder blades are pointing forwards while the upper legs are angled backwards again. Both the upper and lower legs are slightly longer than the head length. Some small lines for the feet, and here some placeholders for the paws. Now back here is the hip, and for that I normally draw this curve that points backwards, and here we have the joint. Now the hip is one singular bone, therefore the both sides cannot move independently from each other, different from the shoulder blades. Now one thing you can do, if you already know where the ground is, which would be along this line here, is starting with the feet at first, and then you work yourself upwards. So for example, I place one foot over here, and the other one right here. Then I draw these parts here for the feet, and the angle is actually predefined, because it depends on where they are in relation to the hip. The further they are at the front, the angle of this part here will become more horizontal, and while it's at the back, it can be angled completely vertical, or even beyond that. The rest is just a simple matter of connecting the dots, but for that purpose you need to know how long the upper and lower legs are. The upper legs are almost 1.5 times the head length, and the lower legs are slightly shorter than that. So you just simply need to draw the lines until you find the sweet spot where both sides, both the upper and lower legs, are the correct size. Then of course do not forget the tail, which, when they are relaxed, is just simply curving down like so, and the tail can be even longer than the spine. And one last thing you can do, which is optional, is to draw an indication for the rib cage, which starts above the knees and then connects with the middle of the spine, like so. It can be helpful, but is not necessary. And here is the prepared version of the complete first sketch. The second stage will add more details and structure. Once again, I'm starting with the nose, here a small V shape, then these straight lines up at a slight angle, and for the nose corner I draw this small wave shape, curving around, and I add this shade, which stretches up all the way up the nose corner, because there is still a small gap. The same on the other side too, but much flatter, because we look at it from the side. Do not forget the small line here. And then in the middle of this line here, I'm starting to draw a very flat wave shape for the top of the nose. I'm curving around, I'm not drawing a sharp corner, and simply draw the nose bridge. On this side here, however, I will leave it blank. To explain their eyes a bit more in detail, I made a super close-up drawing. So a couple of things to consider. Firstly, the eyelids have a certain thickness, so you have this dark skin that adds some depth. Make that skin appear extra shiny, since it's not supposed to be dry. The pupils are circular, unlike smaller cats'. Also, the pupil and iris are on a flat plane, with the round, transparent cornea in front. This adds some extra depth, which you can emphasize by using shadows. And as for the iris color, it is basically orange, or you could call it amber colored. So I'm starting with the inner eye corner, which is slightly drawn inwards, and then the upper lid. And depending on how you draw it, maybe flat or round, you can decide the emotional state. If you draw it rather flat, then it could be relaxed or tired, but if you draw it very round and open, then it could be excited, playful, or maybe even terrified. Here I keep it relatively flat, and next up I draw from this corner here a circular shape, which is cut off at the top. You can also cut off parts of it at the bottom if the eye is very narrow. And at the bottom, once again, I start from the inner eye corner and curve around and draw the lower eyelid. Now this is important. You want to leave a small gap, ever so slightly, small gap, which is wider on this side here, simply because we look at this eye from the right side. Therefore the left will be more visible, while here on this side, it will be simply blocked by fur. Of course, don't forget the pupil, which side depends on how bright it is in the surroundings. And we do the same on the other side. But in this case, it is also cut off by the nose bridge, so we need to take that into consideration. Next up, I'm drawing the mouth. At first, this small line here, and then I can add a bit more curvature to this front part here, if I want to, and the rest is basically the same. But here I'm not drawing the whole shape, but a stop, basically at the mouth corner. As for the chin, I can draw this kind of corner right here, and then basically follow the same shape again. And as for the whiskers, the rows where they grow out of are very faint. They barely can be seen. And then the whiskers themselves, some small lines and some larger ones, mostly curve in the same direction, but some of them can also curve in another way. Now with this sketch, I'm not teaching you anything about drawing open mouths and their teeth. Therefore I made another sketch, a yawning cheetah with its mouth wide open. You can tell that they yawn by their eyes being closed, the tongue stretched forward with the tip curved up. If it would be growling, then it would expose its upper teeth much more, and the nose bridge would wrinkle up. The teeth structure is basically the same for all cats, large and small. 6 incisors and 2 canines on each side. Then you have a gap which is larger at the bottom, followed by the premolars and the molars at the very back. These are more like chunks of teeth, which get progressively larger the further they are located at the back. If you want to draw an open mouth, it is a matter of first of all knowing where the joints are located. They would be right here, closely behind the center, in the lower back quarter of the head. If drawing from the side, you curve down from the nose, stay relatively flat until you get to the mouth corner, strongly curving down, and then progressively get flatter. Also, I'm sorry if these sketches made you yawn. Alright, back to the sketch. Here I'm continuing drawing the head shape. There would be the ear, and this one, at least outer lines, are mostly unchanged, but inside we add more hair. At first at the side this curved hair, a little bit on the other side too, but less. And in the middle we have these strands of long fur. Then following along the top of the head, and here we have the other ear. First a small corner right here, with maybe a little bit of fur. Then following mostly the same curvature once again, but here we have a corner, right here, and some extra skin that is overlapping each other, because right here is a key point where they fold their ear backwards. And once again, some fur on the sides, some strands in the middle, and also add a bit of shade to indicate the ear hole, and continuing the fur downwards. You can also add some details here and there, especially along the forehead. We have this kind of ridge. Once again, here is the prepared version, looking much better. And now I continue with the body, starting with the paws. At first, I draw these small oval shapes as a basic simplification. Then, these indications for the individual toes, right here, and there will be 4, but from this side we can only see 2 or 3. Then add some shape over here too. It is not flat at the top, but it has more shape. And then, right in the middle of these toes, we have the small lines, and the claws grow out of it. It is very small, so you probably cannot see it very well, but you will see it much better very soon, I can tell you. I skipped ahead and drew the other ones too, because they are mostly drawn the same way. Since you cannot see the underside and other details of the paws from this pose and angle, I made some additional sketches. So, as I described before, start with drawing a long oval shape, and section off the front into 4 parts. The bottom should be flattened. The paw pads can also be simplified with small ovals. Only the large paw pad is a bit more complex. I normally draw this long oval at first, and put these angled rectangular shapes next to it. Just keep in mind that these individual elements can overlap each other. Front paws have additional things to add. They have the dew claws back here, which kind of is like their thumbs. It also comes with a small pad. And also the carpal pad further up the ankle, and by comparison quite large. The back paws don't have dew claws or carpal pads, and the pads are slightly larger. Now switching to the second stage of my sketch with more details. I added some pointed tips to the 4 paw pads at the front. The center pad instead has the tip subtracted, so you draw a small wave shape. Also some short lines as indications of the round shape. The fur isn't all that long after all, so their paw pads are still fairly exposed. Some of the fur is still in front of them, depending on the view angle. Cheetahs are incapable of retracting their claws, so you have to draw these two coming out of the center of the toes. They are hook-shaped and kind of dull, which also has to do with the fact that their claws are constantly extended. The general oval shape is mostly retained, just some small adjustments are required. That is, as long as you are not trying to draw a paw with its toes spread out. Alright, continuing with the sketch once again, and here I'm going to build upwards, starting with this foot part here, and then the lower leg. They have very slender legs, so keep that in mind. This part here is curving around the knee, and at the top it is slightly wider. Also, the carpal pad right about here would be sticking out. Then the next part, curving around, and this one is larger than the one for the lower leg. And then the shoulder, like so. I skip the head once again because the other side is drawn the same way. We draw the neck by starting from the bottom of the chin all the way down, and you can actually also add some indications of the bone and muscle structure, make it a bit bumpy. And the other side we draw from the top of the head down towards the shoulders. And the shoulders can stick out quite significantly depending on the distribution of weight. If a lot of weight is focused on just one leg, then the shoulder can stick out quite a lot. Following the spine for the back, as simple as that. And as for the back legs, here at first this foot part, which is quite thin and has a constant thickness this time. And then a sharp corner, which extends quite a lot, almost halfway. Same way over here too. Curving around, and then reconnecting and forming this kind of S shape therefore. So the lower leg is actually quite slender, but the upper leg has much more muscle. And then also the hip, of course. All of these shapes are actually supposed to indicate a strongly oversimplified version of the muscle packs. I went ahead and drew the other side too, and now what I also want to do is make sure that this part here is smooth, and also draw a small curve down here at this joint around the ankle. Then I draw this line here from the knee further up, because it's a bit wider, and then draw this curve along the rib cage all the way up quite a lot, and then it gets very thin around this back part here, curving back around. This is very characteristic for their slender build. They are normally not much bigger than that. And then of course we should not forget the tail, just basically following the same curvature. It's a constant thickness, and at the tip it is round. Here and there you can also add some extra details, like maybe the shape of the rib cage, or some indications of the joint here at the ankle. They have very short fur, and therefore these kind of body structures would stick out quite significantly. Switching one more time to the prepared version, looking much better. And now we move on to the spots, which obviously are essential for their typical look. For that purpose I'm not sketching these out in real time, because that would take way too long. I mean, look at how many spots they have. Instead, I made some extra sketches that are mapping out the spots and roughly illustrate how the spots can flow. Of course, every cheetah's fur pattern is unique, so what you see here aren't rules, but rather rough guidelines. Let's focus on the face at first. Probably the most important part of their facial fur pattern are these long lines from the inner eye corners all the way down until the mouth corners. They start off fairly thin, and the wideness remains relatively constant. There is a little bit of variation though. And once we are below the nose, the thickness significantly increases. As for the directions, at first they are curving alongside the nose bridge, about halfway through the curve down towards the cheeks though. Then you have the short line of spots above the inner eye corner. The rest of the area above the eyes remains spotless. The spots on the forehead tend to converge towards the center, and on top of the head it gets quite chaotic. You also have a few spots in front of the ears. From the outer eye corners you can imagine a couple of lines of spots curving to the back and some around towards cheeks. The areas at the side of the face are also quite random, but at least as a cluster they clearly curve down the neck. Also important is the lower half of the back of the ears is black, and these large spots stretch a little further down. When you paint the spots, vary the size and shape a lot. Sometimes they even can fuse together into small lines. For drawing the spots on the body, I made a crude flow map. When you look closely at the fur pattern, you can kind of see this flow, not just for the positioning, but also the warping of the spots. Along these lines, the spots are slightly wider, especially on the middle of the torso. Of course, the spots are still mostly random though. The flow pattern on the back kind of looks like circles stretched back on the sides, if that makes sense. Areas that have very little to no spots are the neck under the chin, the belly, the underside of the paws, and the backside of the lower hind legs. The very tip of the tail is white, and closely behind it they have large black rings. The further up the tail, the bigger the distance between those rings. They also become spottier and spottier while still being grouped together into rings, more or less. In general, when drawing the spots, try to follow the shape of the body parts and the perspective, warping the spots accordingly. For example, you can see that the spots on the back get gradually flatter and closer together. The same thing for areas where the muscle and bone structure sticks out, like the knees here or the ankles and thighs. This is really important in order to make your drawing look more three-dimensional and adds a lot more shape. You might notice that there are a couple of small dots in between the normal-sized spots. That's an additional little detail, especially for areas on the torso and upper legs. Try to not paint the spots too uniformly. Vary the shape, size and gaps. This will make it look more natural. Let's take a look at the colors now. By the way, I'm not going too much into detail about these steps now, like outlining, highlighting, shading and so on, because these kind of things are rather specific to the style you're choosing, and you can choose whatever style and tools you want to draw with. I am just giving you the basics. Alright, so let us see at first where all the white areas are. Above the eyes, and also a fine line below them, which then stretches a bit further down under the inner eye corner. Some white is next to the nose at the sides and the lower half of the cheeks, the chin plus the neck underneath, the chest and the belly, the inner thighs, the back side of the legs, and the underside of the paws. The tail is mostly black and white too, but some of the brown from the back is stretched along the top side of the tail. The rest of the colors are fairly simple, you just have medium and light orange-brown tones. The back and parts of the head have the darkest brown areas. The nose is basically black, so it is normally quite hard to see details because of it. We already talked about the amber-colored eyes, and the paw pads are medium to dark gray. Here is the final version now, together with shading and highlighting. As a general tip, use shades in order to emphasize certain body shapes like we did with the fur pattern. You can also see it here where the muscles and bone structures are quite distinct. Cheetahs are fairly skinny and have mostly short fur. Therefore, we are able to see indications of the body structure underneath the skin much clearer. Shading, highlighting, and warping textures and patterns are good ways to make these structures noticeable. And that is basically it, at least for this drawing here. I still got two more to show off. The next one is going to be a cheetah cub, sitting proudly. I'm going to show you a time-lapse of its making of process while telling you a couple of interesting facts about these fascinating animals. And when the drawing is done, we're going to analyze it and the differences between adult cheetahs and cubs. Alright, so let's get to it. There are 4 subspecies of cheetahs living in various parts of Africa and also Iran. They are normally solitary animals, but sometimes a small group of males, most of the time brothers, form coalitions to hunt and defend territory together. Let us talk about their running abilities, because that is what they are especially famous for. They are the fastest land animals in the world, reaching speeds of up to 100 kilometers per hour. Maintaining velocities like that takes an enormous amount of energy, therefore their sprints usually last for only about 20 seconds and rarely reach a full minute. Their oversized lungs, heart, liver, nasal passages and arteries enable those rapid physical responses. Features like a small skull, long and slender body build, light bones and a strong, flexible spine help for achieving these incredible accelerations. The semi-retractable claws give them more traction, while the long tail acts as a counterbalance for sharp turns. The black tear markings below their eyes are theorized to reduce the amount of glare from the sun. About 7,000 cheetahs are left on the world and therefore are classified as vulnerable. However, the population seems to be further declining, therefore that rating might change to endangered soon, unfortunately. A lot of these deaths are because of poaching, but also because of farmers who try to protect their livestock. But it is actually not that hard to protect farm animals from cheetahs and other wild animals. Dogs and fences are simple yet effective. With proper education, it is absolutely possible that farmers coexist with cheetahs. NGOs like the Cheetah Conservation Fund is trying to teach exactly that to the people, for the benefit of everyone. Alright, and so here is the finished drawing of this cheetah cub. It is not quite the youngest, but still has ways to go until it becomes an adult. Probably the most obvious characteristic of the cub would be the white long fur on the back, starting from the base of the tail, up the back, all the way up until the top of the head. As they get older, they slowly lose that coat. The last remaining areas will be around the shoulders and neck. And then also compared to the adults, the head to body size ratio is higher, making the head appear bigger. The eyes and ears seem larger too, while the nose is a little bit smaller. Also, the legs and tail's relative size is shorter too, especially when they are very young. As for drawing this kind of sitting pose, make sure that you draw the spine with a slight curvature down the back. And at the hip, the spine is supposed to be angled vertically. The tail then makes a sharp corner. The hind legs are basically folded together, with the knee pointing up and the whole foot flat on the ground. If you want to learn more about how to draw cats in different poses, then you can also watch the video I made specifically about that. It is focused on house cats, but the same rules still apply. So I have one last drawing for you, a special drawing, and let me tell you, I have been so excited to show it off ever since I finished it. Here it is. Probably not something you would have expected. It's fan art for those two lovely people, Proton and Luca Jin. I love their gaming channels, and Luca is a really good artist too. Their cat Bagel is famous for chewing through cables, this little rascal. And so I drew him as he freshly committed another crime and runs away so fast that even the cheetah here is baffled. I love the retro wave aesthetic, so even though I was not used to drawing that style, it was really enjoyable to do. If you want to see how I drew this picture from start to finish and know more about what ideas and techniques were behind this, together with some extra info about those guys, then you can also watch the narrated timelapse video that will come out 1 week after the release of this tutorial, so stay tuned. So that's it for this tutorial, and also for my big cat tutorial series, at least for now. Covered tigers, lions, snow leopards and now cheetahs too, and I'm very glad that I did. I just love all the cats. When I was a kid, I always said that cheetahs are my favorite animals. Nowadays I can't choose between all these precious and beautiful felines. They all are my favorites. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that this tutorial was helpful to you. As always, if you have any questions or constructive feedback, then please leave a comment down below. And for more information and links, please check out the description of this video. There's quite a lot in there. Alright then, have fun drawing!